Hello, Lily Head here, and welcome to today's conversation around dental insurance. This is part of our Dental Business Transactions podcast library. I have great pleasure in introducing Tom Chaston. Tom is co-founder and director at All Med Pro. They are specialist professional insurance brokers to the healthcare sector, obviously in the dental arena, but also to medical professionals such as GPs and consultants, opticians, veterinary practices and other commercial clients. So Tom, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Lily.
It's a pleasure. Tom, you're celebrating 10 years, I hear, as are we at Lily Head.
Yes, thank you. It's been some journey, hasn't it, since we sort of first met up at the BDIA show, that I think it was at the time. And we're going into our 10th year coming up in 2021. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster, but it's been good. It's been a lot of fun. I think we set the business up, always wanted to be a bit of a one-stop shop for dentists primarily, and I still think today, 95% of our clients are dental focused, but we are probably best known for providing dental indemnity cover and practice insurance at the moment, although there is a lot more that we do offer clients.
That's good, yes, and I know obviously it's been a pleasure working alongside you for all these years. And as you say, what a year we've all had. I think today really it would be good to, obviously just to mention that this is the first of two interviews that we are going to be doing together, covering a variety of subjects. But I think today we're going to sort of start distilling really lessons from 2020 that dentists can take into 2021 and beyond. And of course, let's start off with the biggest challenge of 20 is the impact of COVID. So I'd like to ask you now, what has All Med Pro done to support dentists from an indemnity perspective?
Sure, so it is kind of the elephant in the room, isn't it? The whole COVID and the way that insurance companies have supported clients through that time. I mean, in respect to indemnity, what we saw early on is some providers offering big refunds and some other providers doing absolutely nothing to help their clients. What we wanted to do was take a bit of a balanced approach to it. So for us, we looked at the situation and we wanted to make sure that whatever we did was right for the individual client's needs, not just a one-size-fits-all. We were speaking to clients who, many of which had completely stopped working altogether. We spoke to many who had just simply reduced their hours and they were providing triage services and urgent dental care services. So they were still working, but it was on a much reduced, capacity. So we looked at that, and alongside that, we have clients that pay, for their premiums monthly, and other clients that pay in full. We didn't think that offering blanket refunds was the right way to go about supporting clients, and the reason for that really was, we looked at it. We didn't think that the risk of claims coming in during the COVID period for treatment given pre-COVID was going to be particularly reduced. So, what we didn't want to do was reduce the pot of premium funds available to pay claims and then still be hit with the same volume of claims that you would normally get. Because the only path that leads down is for premium increases post-COVID, and probably to levels which were higher than pre-COVID. And I think in the dental sector, there's been an issue certainly over the last 10 years that we've seen, with premiums going up and up and up every single year. So the last thing that we wanted to do after COVID was be coming out of that tricky period with big premium increases. So what we looked at doing instead was reducing the cover for clients that in terms of the number of sessions being worked and things like that. So effectively providing clients with a part-time rate if they were still doing triage and urgent care. So that generated some rebates for those clients. But for other clients, we issued 2-month policy extensions at no cost to the client. So we tried to reflect the fact that clients weren't actually doing the same degree of work and activities for 2-3 months by giving them the extra 2 months at the end. And at the same time, that's not going to be taking premium out of the insurer's pocket and giving it back to policyholders, meaning that we're keeping the premium pot really healthy. So it should lead to more sustainable premiums long term. Thus avoiding big premium hikes. So that was what we felt the right approach would be. For some clients that were paying monthly, we were able to negotiate extra things like direct debit freezes and monthly direct debit reductions on a temporary basis with our finance providers, partners. So, we were able to do extra bits as well. And to be fair, speaking to a lot of our clients, they were pretty happy with the balanced approach. We explained what we were doing and why we were doing it, and the fact that we were trying to protect them for the long run, not just a case of here's £300, £400, £500 refund. It was, well, let's have a look at this. What can we do? Whilst also making sure you're not going to be exposed, in 4, 5, 6 months' time when we're all hopefully, fingers crossed, back to some form of normality, whatever that new normal looks like. We don't want your premium to be going up 20, 30, 40% just because we've got to try now recover money and funds from the COVID period, through giving reductions and still paying claims. So, it's trying to protect clients for the long haul, really, is what we've tried to do.
That sounds very good, because you're taking a very flexible approach as well. And I know certainly in all walks of life, I know of people that under pressure, they've taken a knee-jerk reaction and they've cancelled policies, which of course is catastrophic because they're not thinking long-term. And I'm sure you must have seen some instances like that where you're, flagging up these kind of concerns that you have with clients that have just put the brakes on everything, because cash flow obviously is critical.
It is, exactly, and I think that was one thing we were extremely mindful of is the cash flow. Clearly the private sector's been hit, I think, harder than the NHS sector. However, it doesn't mean the NHS hasn't had its own issues during that time. Yeah. But we were very, very aware that not everybody had the funds to continue paying their indemnity premiums. They're not small premiums either. A lot of the time, they're quite big expenses for clients, and so the level of support that we could give them in terms of their own cash flow was quite important. But you mentioned an interesting point about cancellations. That could have catastrophic implications for the dentist if they are on a certain type of indemnity policy. They may be really exposed in respect of the retrospective cover for treatment they've already given. There's been a lot of publicity, and we'll sort of come on to this later on in the conversation, I think, but there's different types of indemnity cover, particularly with the evolution of the insurance market getting more involved, and some cover just provides cover in respect to retrospective claims for retirement and death only. So, cancelling your policy due to a pandemic would not provide you with the reassurance that you're going to be protected if a claim arises from the work you've done previously. That then leads on to whether you have bigger issues in respect of the GDC compliance. All of a sudden you can't guarantee that the patients that you've looked after can realistically and practically make a claim for negligence if something's gone wrong. So you end up with lots of other issues to think about. So, I don't think we've had any cancellations. Off the top of my head, I can't think that we've had cancellations. I think, we offer different types of cover. So we're one of the few providers in the insurance market to be able to offer different types of cover. So we've got clients on certain policies where if they took the option, they really couldn't afford to pay anything, there was no other alternative for them, but they had to cancel. We do have a cover option which would ensure that they are protected for retrospective claims. So it would be a case of making sure we give the correct advice around that.
Absolutely. And obviously, it's good to know that, you can give that kind of advice to people, that sometimes, there are people out there in dire circumstances, and that you can offer. And I'm assuming that people, and we can get to that at the end of the chat, but there are people that can phone you up and book a review with you, and you can go through all their circumstances if they're particularly in a difficult position right now. And just review what's available out there and what's not essential and what's a good to have and what's a must have.
Exactly.
What I wanted to ask you as well was, are there any other industries, like hot topics, that are really sort of important right now? Possibly lost amongst the melee of all the COVID. Is there anything that's a real hot chestnut right now?
Indemnity again is the biggie. A lot of evolution in that market. There's lots of new providers that have come in the last few years, and that brings some positives as well as some challenges as well. So some of the advantages to that is premium competitiveness. In a market where you've got a lot more providers, they're all competing for business, and so it drives premiums down. But the risk you get with that is the expertise is not necessarily as strong as what it once was, and so the advice, the transparency, the quality of product as well suffers as a result, potentially. And we are aware of products in the market that are just probably not really fit for purpose. We've got non-specialists that have come in, and we've seen advice which is a little bit sketchy. I mean, to be honest, we've seen advice given to dentists from so-called industry experts, and actually the advice that has been given is pretty poor. I mean, there's a big thing at the moment about whether clients should be going for a claims made policy or claims occurrence cover. Those are the two main types of cover that are available to dentists in the indemnity and insurance markets at the moment, and we offer both. This is what I was saying earlier. We are one of the few providers that can offer clients either a claims made policy or a claims occurrence. Claims occurrence covers the client for the treatment provided whilst the policy was live, no matter how far into the future a claim arises. So, the likes of Dental Protection, the DDU, MDDUS, they provide that type of cover to individual dentists as a matter of course. So that way of purchasing cover won't be completely alien to dentists. The other type of cover is claims made, which is where the policy will only respond to claims that are first reported to the insurer during the period of insurance. That has limitations, that has areas of potential ambiguity, particularly if you're switching providers. Like I mentioned earlier, what if you need to cancel a policy under weird circumstances or unusual circumstances, and the policy only responds in the event of retirement and death for retrospective activities. You've got all these grey areas, and we're quite proud of the fact that we can give our clients impartial advice. So our recommendation is always to go for claims occurrence if you have the option available to you, because it takes away the ambiguity. It ensures a client's going to be covered if they switch providers, or if they retire, or if they take a career break, or in the event of COVID, if they need to cancel a policy, they're not going to lose out on cover, so they remain fully GDC compliant. There's a lot less moving parts with it, and some of the arguments being put forward in support of claims made I personally find them a little bit unusual. Despite all that, most of our clients do go for a claims made policy despite the advice to go for occurrence, and some of the historic issues around claims made aren't quite as prominent as maybe was the case 5 or 6 years ago, because you've got a lot more providers in the market now. It takes away some of the risk that existed when there was a much smaller market. 10 years ago when we came in, offering this sort of cover, there was probably only 3 or 4 providers outside of the big 3 discretionary organisations that really supported dentists with indemnity cover, and now there's, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 at least.
Really? Yeah.
Probably 4 or 5 that offer half decent levels of cover. Yeah. So it is an interesting one, but again, what we've done is we've developed things to try and offer that advice, offer the transparency, the impartiality. We've got things like dentists built into our support service. So if a client needs to be able to pick up the phone and speak to a dentist, or speak to an experienced healthcare or dental lawyer, they can do that. We talked about some of the issues around COVID and what should I do and how do I proceed and those sorts of things. Well, with us, they at no extra cost they can pick up the phone and speak to somebody.
We have a similar sort of thing here, whereas we have the ear of the leading dental expert solicitors and accountants, and it's providing that wraparound support really for your clients, isn't it? And listening to the challenges you've faced, it's quite extraordinary that to even consider just going for a cheaper policy just to save a few pounds, the risk, and it is just not worth it, is it, whatsoever?
No, exactly. It's not, and I think one of the things that we've really tried to do is position ourselves as a business where we offer the elite packages for insurance. So we're not really interested in being the cheapest. We're not really interested in getting into an auction with other providers, and when you're all sort of it's a race to the bottom, isn't it? And at the end of the day, if you get into that situation, then there's going to be concessions being made somewhere. You're going to be sacrificing bits of cover that you've got to strip out to try and get to the price point that your competitors are offering it at. And we're not really interested in doing that. If someone wants to go and save money for a much more inferior proposition, then that's up to them. We're all about trying to offer something which is going to do the job. We've got involved in the last couple of years in terms of offering a greater range of risk management services as well, whether it's online CPD or hands-on implant workshop events. So we're trying to really help the dental community long term. This isn't a short-term thing for us. Although we've been in, we're coming into our 10th year of business. We set the company up in 2011. Adam, my co-founder, who you know very well as well, and myself, we've looked after dentists for a lot longer than just the time that All Med Pro have been running. So
Yes,
for us,
exactly.
this is very much a long-term thing, trying to support dentists and not just come in, make a quick buck and get out.
No, I agree, and and it's giving that kind of cover to people, and it's getting the right insurance is so important. And I remember an analogy my husband gave me, because he used to be on the RNLI, and he used to say to people, when I tell you to put on a life jacket, I mean it, and you need to put it on, because the last place you want to be is in the ocean, thinking to yourself, I wished I put on my life jacket, because often people leave it too late and they leave themselves exposed. Well, that's all very interesting, isn't it, really? And it's about ultimately what's best for the dentists as well.
It is. It is. I think one of the other things you mentioned, sorry to cut in as well, about what's hot at the moment. It's the coronavirus, COVID, business interruption claims is another thing which had a pretty big impact on us this year. I sort of touched on it at the start of the conversation. Really, we provide a lot of dental practices with their practice insurance, which as part of that package, it includes cover for loss of revenue. So, the practice being closed due to a pandemic is something which a lot of dentists, I think, and not just dentists, to be fair, most business owners expect would be covered. And to their dismay, they found out that actually, I don't think any policies, very, very few policies across the whole insurance sector have actually offered cover for it. So the problem with that, of course, is you've got all these practices that are told to close. In our sector, in the dental sector, they weren't really closed by the government lockdown, were they? They were closed by the dental regulators because of the AGPs.
Yeah.
That was the big thing. So those sorts of procedures being deemed higher risk, so the practice has to close. You got a loss of revenue issue there. And for a lot of the private practices in particular, they just weren't prepared for it, and understandably, and I think quite a lot of them have struggled. Yeah. So the current situation with all of that is there was still is a High Court test case going through. The FCA have lodged a legal challenge against the insurance companies to the High Court. That doesn't involve every single insurance company, and it doesn't involve every single insurance policy wording either. So that's quite an important thing for, I guess, your listeners to be aware of. I think a lot of people have assumed that if the test case finds in favour of the policyholder, then happy days, we're going to be covered. Unfortunately, it's not quite as simple as that. It's brought forward a number of insurers and a number of policy wordings that have been selected as those which the FCA feel there's ambiguity and therefore a prospect of success, I think, through going through that process. The first stage of that was completed in July, end of July, start of August, found in favour of policyholders. There is now a appeals process going through at the moment. The current update is it's been heard in the Supreme Court, and I think we're expecting the results any day now. They weren't sure whether it would be announced by Christmas, but we're expecting it any time now, and that will have potentially far-reaching implications for the insurers involved, but also the insurance industry. It'd be really interesting to see if this sets a precedent on how policy wordings are built and how clients are treated when these sorts of things happen. I think it's important to stress that insurance providers, insurance brokers like ourselves, we work on behalf of the client, not the insurer. So it's always in our best interest to do right by the customer.
Huge news when it happens.
It does.
Make sure you let me know. So I would say, in summary, Tom, what's your top tips for dentists going forward into the new year right now?
So I would say the top tip is on the indemnity side more than anything. It's going to be, check the cover you've got in place, but really focus on complaints handling as an area of risk mitigation. I think with dental negligence cases, we see so many problems where the individual is trying to deal with things themselves, and they've ended up tying themselves up in knots, and unfortunately it makes our job and the insurer's job a little bit more difficult to try and defend on occasion. So I would say, if you get a patient complaint, pick up the phone to your indemnity provider straight away and talk it through before you respond. because getting that advice early on and understanding the correct process to go through is absolutely paramount. To being able to defend things, it needs to be defended.
Absolutely. Well, look, that's very good advice. So I think we had a couple of good takeaways there. That one and the preference of insurance for people going forward, you mentioned earlier. So thank you very much. I think that that's been very useful to know. And I think in part 2 of our interview, what we're going to be discussing, if it's okay with you, is what's to look forward to in 2021. Let's hope there's plenty. Great opportunities for dentists to look at, ways of reducing risk. We'll be covering that as well. You're going to go into a bit more detail about complaints handling and also vicarious liability risks, with a focus, an accent on buying a dental practice, particularly a limited company, a share sale, and obviously how that affects people buying or selling a practice. So there's some good subject matter there. What's the best way for people to reach you, Tom, to get advice on any of the subjects we've discussed today or any other concerns they might have about finance?
Sure. So we have a lot of good information available on our website. So the web address is www.allmedpro.co.uk, but I'm more than happy to take emails as well. My email address is just simply tom@allmed.co.uk.
tom@allmed.co.uk. That's great. Tom, thank you very much. It's been really interesting and it's always a pleasure, as always, to talk to you.
No problem.
To enjoy listening to this and other podcasts that we do, I welcome our dentists, our valued clients, to go to our website, lilyhead.co.uk. We have a library there of dental business transactions, and these podcasts are available through Apple, Spotify, and also you can see the visual interviews. You see Tom's lovely smiling face on YouTube. Finally, as always, if any of our clients need any advice at all around buying, selling, financing a dental practice, we look forward to hearing from you. And don't hesitate to get in touch with my team. As always, you can get hold of us through the website or email us at dentalbrokers@lilyhead.co.uk, and the telephone number is 0333 772 0654. And we look forward to picking up in our second interview in the new year. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye now.
Thank you. Bye.